Hello, welcome back, and we have completed our first section, which is the header section, and we have designed our header section of the Facebook, and we are going to summarize what we have learned so far. So we have learned about the CSS selector, and in the CSS selector we have learned basic selectors, and in the basic selector we have learned about the universal selector, and the universal selector is an asterisk sign, and we have used this to select all the element inside the HTML. To give all the element style, we use this asterisk sign. And we have also learned about the class selector and the tab selector, ID selector, as well the combinator selector. As for the class selector, we have learned that we can create any class by the dot inside the style.css file. If we use this dot and whatever we tab, it will act as a class. And when we use this class inside the HTML document, it will give that style according to the class which is given inside the HTML and inside the style.css file. And for the tab selector, we can use a name of that tag, and we can place inside the style.css file, and we can call that by the name of that element, and it will grab that element and it will give the style what we have given by the name of that element. So that is called the tab selector, and it is also called a element selector. So as for the ID selector, we haven't talked about much. We only know that ID selector works as a class selector, but not fully as a class selector, because the ID selector is a unique identifier. Once it used, then it cannot be used again. As I said, that ID selector is a unique identifier. It cannot be used second time because it is a unique identifier. I will talk about ID selector in a later videos. You will learn more about this ID selector. And as for the combinator selector, we only learn about the child combinator. As you can see here, the greater than sign we can use to select element of that parent. We can select the child using the child combinator, so it will only select the child of that parent element. So, and for the Flexbox properties, we cover up the flex direction, justify content, and align items, and also the flex, which is the shorthand property of the flex basis, flex shrink, and flex grow. So let's talk about the flex direction. So we have know that flex row is the default value for the flex direction, and whenever we use the display flex, and it will does the same as it shows here. It will stack side by side flex item in a flex container. If we use a flex direction row reverse value, it will reverse the element inside the flex container. As you can see, the flex items is reversed on the right side, 1 2 3, and the row direction, you can see it's a start from the left side. If you use flex direction column, we can align our item in a column direction as we did here. We have learned that as well. You can see it start from the top 1 2 3, and when we use column reverse, it will do the same which is showing here, but in a column direction, 1 2 3. It reverses the flex item in a column in a bottom direction. You can see the column is now reverted to the bottom, and it is starting from the bottom to the top. So that is how a flex direction property works. And if we focus on the justified content, you can see the justified content flex start, it will align item in a main axis in a starting position. If you use the flex end value, you can see it will grab the flex items and it will move to the right side. So as we notice here, justified content doesn't reverse the element as it does in a flex direction. If you use center value, it will center the items inside the flex container in a main axis direction. If you use space between value, it will give the space between flex items in a flex container. And if you use space around, it will give space around these elements side by side. The space evenly property gives the evenly equally space to each and every element side by side. So that's the justified content property. And for the align items, what we have learned that we can align item in a cross axis. If you use flex start property, it will align the item on the top. If you use flex n value, it will align item in a cross axis in a bottom position because we use flex n. If you use flex start, it will align item to the top in a cross axis. If you use center, it will center the element in a cross axis in a flex container. If we use stretch, by the default this stretch value is set for the lying items. It will stretch the flex item to fit the flex container. For the baseline value, the item will be positioned according to the baseline of the flex container. So let's summarize what we have learned about the flex property. In the flex property, it is a shorthand property of flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis. As we learned that flex grow property grow the flex item inside the flex container, and the value which is given inside the flex grow property, according to this value, the element will grow according to these values which is given inside the flex grow property. As you can see, the first div is given the flex grow 1, and the second div is given the flex grow 2, and the last div is given the flex grow 0. So the last div is not growing because is given the grow value of 0. When you give the 0 value of the flex items, it will not grow inside the flex container. And you can see the center div is given the twice of the width of these two elements because we are given the flex grow 2, and the first element is given the 1 value, and that is why the first div is grow larger than the third, because the third one is given the 0 flex grow value. And for the flex shrink property, if we put higher value inside the flex shrink property for the flex items, whenever we resize the browser, it will shrink the items faster and slower according to the value which is given inside the flex shrink property. What I mean to say that when we resize the browser, these items will shrink according to the value which is given here. The higher the value goes, the faster the item will shrink inside the flex container whenever it's resized inside the browser. For the flex basis, it is act as a min width property, but it is much powerful than min width property because it can shrink the item if the browser is resized. It will also give the min width property according to the flex basis. So that is what the flex basis does. You can see that first element is given the 70 pixels width, and the second element is 90 pixel, and third element is 80 pixels. What it does, it will give this space to this flex item. When we resize the browser, it will shrink these items according to the flex shrink property 1, which is given to this flex item by default. So whenever we resize the browser, it will shrink these items, and if you use min width property, it will not do that. So it is much powerful than min width property. So that's what we have learned so far. If you haven't leave a review, please do. So if you have any question, ask me. I will happy to help you guys. If you have any question, please do post a question and I will happy to answer you. So thank you for watching. See you in the next lecture.